Your body still ducks from a hand that stopped being raised years ago. Someone raises their voice, and before you can think, you flinch. Your shoulders climb. Your stomach drops. You hold your breath. You go quiet, scanning their face for the storm you're sure is coming. Maybe you just brace. And here's the part nobody tells you. That flinch isn't weakness, and it isn't yours to be ashamed of. It's a frightened child living inside you, still reacting to raised voices that stopped years ago. You learned this long before you had words for it. And the reason goes deeper than you'd think. If you felt that flinch in your own body just now, go ahead and subscribe. What we're about to name is something most people carry for decades without ever once being told what it actually is. What you're about to understand is the quiet rule your body wrote a long time ago, a rule that's been running every room you've ever walked into. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And somehow, that's a relief. There's a frightened child living inside you. It's time to hear them. Let's start with the flinch itself, because that's where your body keeps its oldest secret. Someone's voice rises, maybe not even at you, and something in you tightens before a single thought arrives. That's your startle reflex, firing faster than reason. You didn't choose it. You can't talk yourself out of it. People call it being too sensitive, but that word misses everything. What you're feeling is a flinch response that was installed early, back when a raised voice meant something was about to change. And it always seemed to. Notice how specific the body gets. The shoulders rise toward the ears. The breath goes shallow or stops entirely. You've been holding your breath without noticing for who knows how long. The jaw sets. This is a tense body doing exactly what it was trained to do. Get small, get quiet, get ready. We call that bracing for impact, and it's not drama. It's your nervous system running an old program at full speed, faster than you can interrupt it. But this didn't start with you being an adult in a room. To understand it, we have to go back. There was a moment. You might not even remember it clearly. When you were very small and a voice in your home went up half a tone. You couldn't leave. You couldn't fix it. You had no power and nowhere to go, so your body did the only smart thing left. It learned to read the air. It learned to flinch early, to brace before the storm, because feeling unsafe with no exit teaches a child one lesson fast. Anticipate. Always anticipate. And here's the part that reframes the whole thing. That hypervigilance you carry, scanning faces, reading tones, sensing the shift before anyone speaks, that wasn't a flaw growing in you. It was intelligence. A child who can predict the next raised voice gets a half-second of warning, and in some homes, a half-second is everything. Your body wasn't broken. It was adapting, brilliantly, to a world that didn't feel steady. The flinch was a survival skill. The problem is, nobody ever told it the war was over. So it kept running. Years passed. The house changed. The people changed. And your nervous system kept standing guard like a soldier who never got the message. This is what complex trauma does. It isn't one big event so much as 1,000 small moments where a child learned the world could turn on a dime. The emotional neglect of never being soothed afterward, never having someone kneel down and say, "You're safe now," meant the alarm never got switched off. So it stayed on. Quietly. Underneath everything. Think about what that costs in an ordinary day. A coworker speaks sharply and your whole afternoon curdles. A partner sighs and you're already apologizing for something you can't name. This is the fawn response leaking through. The urge to smooth, to soothe, to make the other person okay so the danger passes. You became fluent in everyone else's mood because, once, your safety depended on it. That's not people-pleasing as a character flaw. That's a frightened inner child still trying to keep the peace it never could. There's a name for the deeper machinery here, and it comes from attachment theory. John Bowlby, the British psychologist who built that framework in the mid-20th century, showed that a child's first relationships become the blueprint for how safe the world feels. When the people who were supposed to be your shelter were also the source of the raised voices, you got caught in an impossible bind. The very person you needed for comfort was the one you had to brace against. That's an attachment wound. and it lives in the body, not the memory. This is why you can't simply decide to stop flinching. The reaction doesn't live in the thinking part of you. It lives lower, older, in the part that handles fight or flight before your conscious mind even logs the threat. Bessel van der Kolk put it plainly: the body keeps the score. Your muscles remember what your mind has politely agreed to forget. So when a voice rises and you go cold and quiet, that's not you being childish. That's the child you were, surfacing for one moment. And maybe that's the first thing worth doing, not fixing, just noticing. The next time someone's voice climbs and you feel the flinch, try to catch it without judgment. Name it silently. There it is, that's the old alarm. You don't have to make it stop. You just have to recognize that it's a startle reflex from a long time ago, not an accurate reading of right now. That tiny gap between the reaction and the shame around it is where everything begins to change, slowly. But it begins, because here's what almost nobody realizes about a flinch. It's not just fear. It's loyalty. It's a small, devoted part of you that took a job at age 4 and never once called in sick. It has been protecting you from a danger that, in most of your rooms today, simply isn't there anymore. And the strange grief of growing up is realizing how hard that little part worked, how alone it was, how nobody ever came to relieve it of duty. That part has a story. We should hear it. Let me tell you about one person, a man who came to understand all this late. He grew up in a house where the front door slamming meant his father was home, and the volume of the evening depended entirely on a mood he couldn't control. So he became a reader of doors. As an adult, he couldn't figure out why his wife's footsteps coming up the stairs made his chest go tight. Nothing was wrong. She wasn't angry. But his body didn't know that yet. For years he thought something was just defective in him. He'd snap into apology mode over nothing, go quiet at dinner, replay conversations hunting for the mistake he must have made. His wife would ask what was wrong, and he'd say nothing. The most honest lie he had, because he truly couldn't name it. He was walking on eggshells in a marriage that had no eggshells in it. The danger was gone. The bracing wasn't, and that gap between them was quietly breaking his heart. What finally shifted for him wasn't a breakthrough. It was a sentence. A therapist asked him gently, "How old do you feel when she comes up those stairs?" And without thinking, he answered, 7. That number landed like a stone in still water. 7. Not the grown man with a mortgage and a steady job, a 7-year-old listening for the weather. That's the moment the present and the past finally touched. And once they touched, they couldn't come apart again. There's research that explains why a moment like that hits so hard. Back in 1975, the developmental psychologist Edward Tronick ran what's now called the still face experiment. A mother plays warmly with her baby, then goes blank, flat, unresponsive for just 2 minutes. The babies try everything to bring her back, smiling, reaching, calling. When nothing works, they collapse into distress, then into a kind of resigned shutdown. 2 minutes. That's how fast a child registers emotional absence. Now imagine years of it. The body remembers? Because that's the thing about emotional neglect. It isn't only what was done to you. It's also what didn't happen. The comfort that never came. The hand that never landed on your back after the shouting stopped. Tronick's babies show us the blueprint. A child who reaches and finds no one learns to stop reaching and to manage the fear alone. That lonely self-management becomes a personality. We call it independent or low maintenance or easy. It was none of those things. It was a child going still, and maybe you recognize that stillness. The way you went quiet as a kid, not because you had nothing to say, but because saying it had never once made things better. Silence was the safest room in the house. So you moved in. You learned to take up less space, to need less, to feel less out loud. That shrinking yourself wasn't shyness. It was strategy. A small body figuring out that the less it asked for, the less there was to lose. And it worked. That's the heartbreaking part. Here's something concrete you can try if any of this is landing. The next time the flinch arrives, place one hand flat on your own chest, not to fix anything, just to be there. Then say, silently, the words that child never heard. That was loud. You're safe now. I've got you. It feels awkward. It might even feel ridiculous. Do it anyway. You're not performing self-help. You're offering a frightened inner child the one thing it waited years for. Presence. From the one person who never left. This is the beginning of what people call reparenting, and it's less mystical than it sounds. It just means becoming, for yourself, the steady adult who wasn't there in the moment you needed one. Not erasing the past, you can't, but updating the alarm. Every time you stay with the flinch instead of shaming it, you're teaching your nervous system something new, that a raised voice can rise and pass without the sky falling. That's self-soothing, real felt safety built one small moment at a time. And it accumulates. You won't notice it happening at first. Inner healing is undramatic. It doesn't announce itself. Then one day a voice goes up across the room, and you turn toward it instead of away, curious, not collapsed. You realize you didn't hold your breath. You realize your shoulders stayed down. It's the smallest thing, and it's enormous. Because it means the child finally heard the message the war was over. Someone finally told them, and that someone at long last was you. But to fully relieve that child of duty, you have to understand what it's been guarding against, and it isn't really the voice. The voice is just the trigger. What the flinch protects against is older and quieter. The terror of being alone with a feeling too big to hold. That's the real wound underneath the raised voices. Emotional abandonment. The fear that when things get loud, no one steady stays. And that fear has shaped more of your life than one flinch ever could. Look at how that fear quietly runs your relationships now. You over-apologize, smoothing wrinkles nobody else even sees. You agree out loud while disagreeing inside, because keeping the peace still feels like survival. You read silences like weather reports, certain that a quiet partner is a storm gathering. None of this is manipulation or weakness. It's the fawn response, grown up and wearing adult clothes. A child who learned that being easy kept them safe becomes an adult who can't tell where their own needs went. They went quiet like everything else. And there's a specific loneliness in that. You can be in a room full of people who love you and still feel like you're managing them, tracking moods, adjusting yourself, performing okayness. That hypervigilance never fully clocks out. It costs you the very thing you most wanted. To be held without first earning it, to be safe without first scanning for danger. You learned that love had conditions, that it could turn loud without warning. So you've been paying a toll on a bridge that's actually free. Nobody told you the toll booth closed years ago. Here's a way to start finding your own voice again, buried under all that monitoring. Try a small piece of journaling tonight. Write at the top of a page, what did I learn to feel was dangerous? Then just let your hand move. Don't edit. You might be startled by what comes out, needing things, taking up space, being loud, being seen. These were the natural impulses of a child, and somewhere along the way they got filed under threat. Naming them is how you start filing them back under human. Because that's what the whole thing comes down to. A child who was treated like a problem to manage instead of a person to know. Alice Miller wrote about this with terrible tenderness. The gifted child who learns to read the parent's emotional needs so precisely that they lose track of their own. You became an expert in everyone else's interior and a stranger to your own. That's the trade emotional neglect demands. Your attunement was real and beautiful, and it was pointed in exactly the wrong direction. Inward is where it always belonged. So let's turn it inward now gently. Sometime this week, when you're calm, try writing a short letter, not a long one, to the child you were. The one who flinched. Tell them what you figured out, that the raised voices were never their fault, that they were never too much, that the fear made sense. You don't have to believe every word as you write it. The body learns slowly, but it does learn, and a letter like that reaches a place that arguments never could.
Rest.
Still waiting, the toes the side packs to willing 90 Chichivik. Jack you, 1-2. Because part of you is still waiting. That's the quiet truth underneath the flinch. A small, loyal part of you has been standing at a door for a very long time, listening for footsteps, hoping the right person finally comes home and says it's safe to stop guarding now. You spent years hoping it would be a parent, a partner, somebody. But the one who actually walks back through that door, the only one who ever could, is you, the grown-up you became, arriving at last. And when you arrive, something reorganizes inside. The hypervigilance softens, not because you forced it, but because the lookout finally has backup. The flinch doesn't vanish overnight. It's been on duty too long for that, but it loosens its grip. You start to feel the difference between a memory and a moment. A voice rises, and for the first time you can ask, quietly, is this actually dangerous, or does it just feel old? That single question is freedom. It puts you back in the present, where you actually live. Notice what's happening here, because it's a real shift in identity, not just behavior. You're moving from being someone the flinch happens to, toward being someone who understands the flinch and can hold it. That's not a small upgrade. For most of your life, the reaction was the whole story, proof that something was wrong with you. Now it's becoming a message, a piece of history you can read with compassion instead of shame. The same response, completely re-understood. That changes everything about how you live inside your own body. And from this new vantage point, the old behaviors look different too. The apologizing, the bracing, the going quiet, you can finally see them as a child's brilliant solutions to a problem no child should have had. There's a grief in that, and there should be. Let it come. Grieving the comfort you didn't get is part of how you finally give it to yourself. You're not being dramatic or stuck in the past. You're doing the work nobody did for you, the long overdue work of finally being on your own side. Self-trust grows in this exact soil. Every time you catch the flinch and stay kind, every time you ask old or now, and answer honestly, you're proving something to yourself that no one proved to you back then, that you'll stay, that you won't abandon yourself the moment things get loud. That's the foundation everything else gets rebuilt on, not the absence of fear, but the presence of you, steady, in the middle of it. The child kept waiting for someone reliable to show up. Turns out reliable was always going to be you. So where does this leave you, standing in your ordinary life with this old knowledge made new? It leaves you with a choice you never had as a child. What to do the next time a voice rises and the flinch arrives on cue. You can meet it now. You can put a hand on your chest, feel your shoulders, and remember that the small one inside you is finally not alone in the room. The bracing was never the problem. It was a child holding a post no one relieved them from. And that's the quiet turning of it all. You don't have to become someone new, someone calmer, someone fixed. You just have to walk back through the door you've been guarding and reach the part of you still standing there, still listening, still hoping someone came. Someone did. You did. The flinch will fade not when you defeat it, but when the child behind it finally believes the footsteps on the stairs are safe ones. And one day, without deciding to, you'll hear a voice rise and simply stay. So now you know. That flinch when someone raises their voice was never a flaw in your wiring. It was a child doing something brilliant in a moment that asked too much of them. And here's where it gets to matter. Knowing this only changes your life if you let it touch the way you treat yourself from today forward. So let me ask you a few things, and I want you to actually sit with them. When was the first time you remember bracing for a voice that hadn't even risen yet? Who was in the room? And if that small version of you were standing in front of you right now, listening for the storm, what would you want them to finally hear? Don't rush past those questions. The people who heal aren't the ones with the cleanest pasts. They're the ones brave enough to look back and feel it without flinching away from the flinch itself. And I'd love for you to do one small thing before you go. In the comments, leave a single word, just one, that describes the child you used to be. Quiet, watchful, tired, brave. Whatever word rises first. You might be surprised how many strangers leave the same one, and how much it helps to know you were never the only one listening at that door. Thank you for staying all the way to the end of this. Truly, that you gave this your time, your attention, your willingness to look at something tender. That means more than you know. You spent your whole life waiting at that door for someone to come back. The footsteps you've been listening for were always going to be your own. And here's what stays with me even now. The footsteps became your own. But notice what you do the moment someone else's voice rises. You don't just brace anymore, you soften them. You smooth, you soothe, you make yourself easy, agreeable, small. We called it the flinch. But there's a quieter version that doesn't look like fear at all. It looks like kindness. It looks like being good. And almost no one realizes how early they learned that being nice was the only way to stay safe.